reasons involved in distributing the links after the session. And I would also ask that all present, if you keep your cameras switched on during the course of the session, it just makes for an easier presentation and webinar in terms of engagement. So with that, I'm just going to ask my colleague to press record and we can begin. So yes, I'm Kevin, the Head of Education here at IQM, and this is the support session looking at the nitty-gritty of elements 1 and 2 of the self-evaluation report. When we look at the report, you've got the first section, and guys, I would actually suggest, if possible, you have a copy of this open on your screen, or maybe you've got a pen and paper to hand, or even better, a blank copy in front of you where you can scribble and make notes or annotate. In the IQM self-evaluation report, the first thing you will see at the beginning of the section is the introduction, which is kind of a data capture. And after the data capture, when you get into element 1, we're looking at the inclusion values of the school. And often when I am working with inclusion leads and senior leadership teams, I will let them know that this is, in my opinion, as an assessor, the most strategic of the 8 elements in the document, and is often done very well as an SLT activity or as a whole staff room activity. You consult with your stakeholders and colleagues, and you're examining aspects of best practice, best current pedagogy, and the policies in school that are creating a culture of belonging. So in your introduction, your school overview commentary, you're setting the tone. You're giving our assessor, who will visit your school in due course, good background knowledge and steer on your element 1 and the work that has gone in to establishing an inclusive values of the school. So take the time in that school overview commentary section to go into a little bit of detail. You know, give us the narrative of the last 2 to 3 years, the background, recent initiatives that have really worked, key personnel and drivers of inclusive change and agenda in the school. Even let us know how you've pulled together element 1. Underneath that box, the school overview commentary, is the future plans in this area. And I know as an assessor, when I am visiting schools, it's something I like to hone in on. I know a number of my colleagues do. The self-evaluation report is designed so that your strengths will come to the fore. It's an auditing or evaluative tool where your strengths will be apparent. You and your team can celebrate the improvements you have made to make your school more inclusive over time. But we're really interested in those schools that can sustain improvement and realize that when our assessor visits your school, we're not just there for one day in time to tick a box and to give you a ribbon. We're very keen to see those schools that have future plans in this area, that they have used our auditing tool, our self-evaluation report, to draw conclusions, concise conclusions going forward that will help you have action plans in the academic years thereafter. It forms a big part of discussion on assessment review. Our assessor will want to hear about your next steps. We're very keen to hear about how you intend to chase down inequity, identify inequity in your school, and where you intend to take this forward. And then underneath that is the inclusive practice grading, a 1, 2, or 3, where you yourselves as a team, upon completion of each of the elements, grade yourself, with 1 being the strongest grading. How do you think you've performed? What have you put forward that suggests that element 1 is a strength of the school? Element, if you grade yourself at a grading number 1, you're saying with very strong practice because of this process, we think that we have got many things that are working and working well, and we want to future-proof them. If you grade yourself 2, you have possibly identified areas, a number of areas in need of enhancement, and that'll be open for discussion with our assessors. And if you're grading yourself at number 3, maybe you're not quite assessment ready. Maybe there's a little bit more work needs to be done. And there's support and steer given to schools by our central team who may raise that issue with you. Why have you graded yourself number 3? What still needs to be done to move you up into a 2 or into a 1? So looking at element 1 itself, the inclusion values of the school, what we have done here is we have looked at our sub-criteria, the left-hand side criteria. They are our national standards for whole school improvement, where we believe inclusion should be at the forefront. And in this document, you're going to benchmark your practice against our national standards, our sub-criteria. And with the screen in front, what we have done is we've maybe looked at a bossy verb or a key element or phrase within that sub-criteria that we would like you as school and IQM leaders to address when giving a comment, succinct comment in the middle section as to how you're progressing with that. So element 1.1, inclusion is articulated as evident, as central to the school's ethos. In that section alone, we want to learn about how inclusion is integral to your ethos. Well, ethos is the Greek word for character. So how does inclusion run right across your school through every artery, every process and system? Policy, induction, transition, the day-to-day learning. Where do we see inclusion in your school's ethos? Let us learn a little bit more about how it's intrinsic to the work that you do. 1.2, analysis. We're asking you there for a clear analysis of need that leads to detailed action planning and the evidence of positive outcomes. Really, there we're in your analysis, we're looking to see how you have got inclusion at the forefront of your school evaluation, how you use the evidence gathered to chase down inequity. And please let us know about your recent wins in this area, where you've identified groups of children or aspects of school improvement because of your self-evaluations that you've analysed and then you have acted upon. Let us know about that particular journey and how inclusion's been the driving tool. 1.3, collegiate. This is where you can tell us a little bit about the teams that exist within your school, the team ethic, how people become onboarded and how they work with colleagues, the skills behind building teams, the roles and responsibilities, how they're understood, how they come to be, and then how impactful that work is. Inclusion is all about the collegiate approach, and where you've got coaching and mentoring, induction of new staff, and steering of experienced colleagues and utilising their skills. Very keen to hear how you've got holistic and collegiate approaches to your policy development and where there is clarity in communication, and from the head teacher's point of view and from maybe the SENCO's point of view, effective delegation. Who is taking on the inclusion agenda beyond the traditional heavy lifters? 1.4, role models. How are staff in your school effective role models and agents of inclusive change? How well does your team understand and engage with the inclusion agenda? If you have a curriculum responsibility point, you're ahead of a key stage, you're a lunchtime assistant, you answer the phones in the school, you're involved in interventions. How do you model inclusion? How are you a role model? Where is the professional responsibility? And how do people year on year take bespoke action for the children in front of them and do not just lift off the shelf tried and trusted models from previous. 1.5, review. What aspects of your school are reviewed in terms of enhancing your inclusion provision? I know when our assessors visit the school and they may ask the question, well, who's responsible for inclusion in the school? Well, we're looking for safeguarding standards of excellence there. We're all responsible for inclusion. Not the answer where someone points and says, oh, we've an IQM lead, she's responsible for inclusion, or we've an inclusion manager, the buck stops at her. No, we're all responsible for inclusion, so we should all be involved in the review. And how do you spread that message of accountability? 1.6, the pupils in your school. How aware are they of the value that they add and bring to the school by feeling fully included? Where do you teach tolerance and empathy? Where are your school values present in their daily interactions and in their learning? How strong is a pupil voice in the school? Where are they taking the inclusion agenda beyond the four walls? 1.7, achievement. How is achievement celebrated in the school? Is it through weekly assemblies, classroom points, letters home, visibility on the website? Do you celebrate achievement well, or has it gone stale? Often schools, when they look at achievement and how the assemblies around the school, think there's always a fresh approach just around the corner. With new members of staff coming into your school, I think it's always good to reflect on how achievement is celebrated. How are you building self-esteem in our students? How are we unlocking potential by celebrating achievement in the correct manner and fashion? 1.8, the school is friendly and welcoming for all. I know when our assessors visit schools, they often try and picture what it would be like for a new student, a new pupil arriving, and how welcoming does it feel for the child and their family in their first days in the new school? What does their first morning look like? And how have the school adapted and understood the needs of children joining the school mid-year, or maybe arriving in the school from a different setting in September? How welcoming truly are you? It's usually a strength of schools. So do tell your story here about how you think deeply about it to become ever more welcoming. And I know, again, from an assessor's perspective, we're interested in how children arrive and begin their journey in their school, but also with a recruitment and retention crisis. How welcoming and friendly is your school for new staff? What does their first term in your school look and feel like? How psychologically safe do they feel that they become a part of the fabric over time? That they can learn to and adapt, and also the schools show a little bit of flexibility and understanding and give them the time to feel welcomed. 1.9, communication. How effective is the communication with all of your learners? What is the feedback like? What are plenaries in the school? How inclusive are they? Do children understand what it is the teachers want from them during lessons and thereafter, and that they can build upon that? And how effective is communicating this message to the home? Parents are established and integral partners in the learning of children. So how effective are your communication strategies from staff to child level, staff to parent level? And that it's a two-way process, that children and parents and stakeholders also can communicate effectively back with the school. How open and transparent are your communication policies? 1.10, transition. Always very keen to learn about transitions from your setting to a new setting, or from a new setting into your setting, but also internal transitions. We're coming towards the end of the school year. Do your children get a chance to meet with new classmates and their new teachers ahead of the summer? which reduces levels of maybe anxiety or fear. And then come September, how well informed are the new teachers about the needs of their children, that September is not replication of stuff that could have been passed and eased much easier in term 3. Very keen to hear about those transitions. When it comes to looking after all of the children in the school, transitions are spots that leadership should be looking at. Are they potential weaknesses in the school? How do we refine our systems that make sure that no child falls through the cracks? I know schools do that very well and pay a lot of attention to that. So I think in that box, you'll have a lot to tell our assessor. And it's always good to reflect upon that. You want your transition procedures to be as tight as possible. 1.11, your external partners. Those partners that you have chosen and can see that they can add value to your organization. So what level of communication exists with these external partners so that they can provide strong provision and it impacts upon the quality of your school? If they're lucky enough to become your external partners, you want them to add value. So there's a reason behind your approach to them and how you expect them to match and reach your standards, that they are lucky enough to be working with your brilliant children. How do they buy in to your inclusion values? And 1.12, well-being support. What support is in place, or do you continue to look at or strive to move towards, that offers support for your staff and your pupils, and that you can evidence with us that well-being as an integral part of your school's ethos? Coming back to 1.1, if ethos means the Greek word for character, and we're talking about inclusion values of school, well-being support should reflect that, and the school's approaches to providing bespoke well-being support within the unique context that your school finds itself in. So that I'm moving towards the end of element 1, and I would ask, I'm going to see if I can just pop out here so I can see the chat a bit better. I would ask at this point if anyone has any questions that they would like to ask specifically about element 1. Okay, here's one that's came in. Kevin, do we have to submit evidence each time we send through an element for approval? How do we know when we're assessment ready? And does asking for support harm our chances of becoming a centre of excellence school? Well, I'll take these one by one here, guys. No, we ask for a school to submit minimal, sorry, I beg your pardon. We do not ask schools to submit evidence throughout their journey. You'll notice from the third box, it says evidence. Boxes 1, 2, 3. On the left-hand side, you've got our sub-criteria, and in the middle is the bit where you add comment, and it needs to be succinct, and that's where the detail goes. In the third box where it says evidence, a bullet point list is suffice. You're completing this self-evaluation report for you and your school, not for IQM, and we're also not Ofsted. You're completing this, and you're saying this evidence is available in-house, and if our assessor wished to request to see some of it, they can when they visit your school. But really, it's happened before where schools have felt that they cannot finish an element until they have accumulated folders and folders of evidence that they have tried to send via email, or it's spent time out of number compiling it together. It is not necessary. The evidence, if you say it exists, we absolutely believe that it is. We are interested in the comment section. How do we as a school know when we're assessment ready? That's where you work in good communication with our central team. I would suggest that you complete a few elements and send it through to our central team for reading and approval. And at that point, if we feel that there's additional work that needs to be undertaken, you will be told. Also, if we think that you're on the right path, we'll say, do you know what, you can probably expedite the process and move faster through the remaining elements. And when you've got around 4/5, 5/8 of the document complete, we would then say to you, have you got a time frame in mind when you would like to be assessed? Now, normally it takes a school between 2 and 4 full academic terms to be assessment ready, depending on factors related to your context. But 2 and 4 full academic terms usually is enough. There are sometimes there's mitigating circumstances, but I think that's 2 to 4 terms is fair. And particularly for the schools I've got here in front of me, where you are spending summer term gathering evidence and looking at this, you're probably going to be in a position come September to really press go with this, and you've got the full academic year in front of you. So you may well be looking at a spring or a summer term assessment in 2025. You're all going to be at different stages, but usually that's how long it takes. And do confer and communicate regular and often with our central team. And the last one there is, does asking for support harm our chances? Absolutely not. The support is there to aid you. We're school improvement partners. So the support there that you're asking for, the telephone support or the email support, is there to support you through the process. And I would advocate that you use that when appropriate. You know, we're the central team. We will not be the people who are coming in to assess your school at the end. We are there to help steer you on the right course towards being assessment ready. One question just came in there. Are there success criteria so you know if you're 1, 2, 3? No, the 1, 2, 3, the self-determining is exactly that. It's a determination by the school. If you think that it is particularly strong, circle yourself as element 1. If you think it is 2, where you think, you know what, it's emerging, we're doing quite well there, but there's significant work to be done, we'll say 2. I would only put number 3 if I felt my school itself wasn't assessment ready. The success criteria, I guess, is how well you can populate the sub-criteria above. And where you are knocking them off and hitting around 85 to 90% of our sub-criteria, and you're evidencing it well, I would suggest there you're actually in the frame for thinking longer term, having a sustainable model as a centre of excellence school, where ultimately you may join our successful clusters. Okay, and with that, I'm going to revert back to the slideshow and move to element 2. Okay, so element 2 is regarding the leadership, management, and accountability of inclusion in the school. And again, your school's overview commentary. Again, give us detail and depth. I always think in the commentary, it's your chance to really set the stall out. And I'm never one for giving quantity to schools or how much you should write there. I believe absolutely in being succinct and quality. But when it comes to the commentary, I'm roughly looking for 1 A4 page there. That box, can you fill it and let us know about how the leadership management of the school are holding people to account for inclusion and the different aspects of how inclusion well embedded it is into school life. (2.1) the vision for the school. Please evidence for us how your school leaders at all levels have an inclusive and an ambitious and an aspirational vision for the school with inclusion at its heart. Here, really let us know about how inclusion is not just, like I've said a few times, a tick box or is being done just so that IQM can come to school, but really where you want to take inclusion, how far you want to go with chasing down all forms of inequity that exist in our schools, and how you want to take in stakeholders and learners from the margins and bring them right to the core of the school where they're adding value. So what is your vision in terms of inclusion? Please detail that in the comments section. 2.2, safeguarding. Let us know about the effective safeguarding safeguarding culture that exists in your school. And again, I'm probably only interested there to save you time in the enhancements you have made to your safeguarding procedures in the last 1 or 2 years. We know that you've safeguarding, we're always striving for those marginal gains and tightening of procedures and protocol, new aspects of training, new issues that need to be addressed. But let us know how tight, watertight your safeguarding culture is and how everyone's involved in it. And I suppose the mindset we're looking for there is, if we can get safeguarding as a whole school approach, we want inclusion at the same levels and at the forefront of people's minds. And the crossover between safeguarding and inclusion, many people I'm speaking to here nodding their heads, know exactly that there are a number of issues that dovetail very nicely. 2.3, staff well-being and how it is being addressed. Issues that have arisen, maybe before COVID, after COVID, or ongoing. And what is the approach from leadership and management to making sure your school has a great and a healthy place and a reputation that is enhanced by your inclusive approach to staff well-being. 2.4, the effective structures and systems of self-evaluation that are taking place. So how do you use your staff meeting time, and how do coordinators and class teachers and teaching assistants come together to evaluate teaching and learning and inclusion across the school? Do you keep minutes of these meetings? Do you keep pro formas and records of the changes and enhancements you have made? 2.5, the monitoring of the systems that improve the quality of education and learner engagement and achievement. I'm interested in there knowing about your performance review cycles, your book lifts, your planner scrutinies, your learning walks, where you sit down and take temperature checks with your staff, your children, and your parents to monitor performance day to day. Are you going in the right direction? And is inclusion at the heart of it? How do you monitor it? And then what happens after a monitoring period? Does it get filed away, or is there change that can be enabled or enacted, either immediate change or longer term? So what does a monitoring cycle look like in your school? 2.6, aspects of professional development that leadership and management have identified as essential and a need for your staff. So we're interested there in hearing about the professional development that everyone is undertaking. It could be a key part of the school development plan, but also there where individual people have got bespoke aspects of professional development, where maybe personal interests or needs at the certain point in their professional juncture are met and catered for, and also how they reflect the needs of the children. So professional development reflects what you're finding from your monitoring and evaluation throughout the school. There should be a flow there. 2.7, the induction policies and practices in place for new staff, including support for coordinators new to the role. That lift up, that elevation, that progression through people's career, where they are allowed the time to grow into the role, understand the needs of the role, and to feel psychologically safe within the role. That they can only, when they feel psychologically safe, will they ultimately bring success to the table. So what are the induction policies throughout the school at people's different career entry points? And how is inclusion the key ingredient in that? An inclusive vision for all. 2.8, aspects of external advice, where you have sought professionals beyond your organization to come and help and enhance, where a need has been identified. Could be speech and language therapists, could be counsellors, could be consultants in different aspects of school pedagogy you've looked at. I was visiting a school today that have a very strong forest school program in place, but initially they saw external advice. They visited schools, they spoke to a consultant, and now 2 years down the line, they find themselves in a position where schools want to visit them and learn about their journey and where they want to take it. Very, very proud to visit that school today, a flagship school for inclusion, and how they've managed change expertly and how inclusion is at the heart of change management in the school. 2.9 and 2.10, Governor's Challenge and Governor's Training. Governors are in a strategic and unique position in your schools to set the strategic steer for the school in terms of inclusion. Do they understand the inclusion agenda? Are they fully au fait with the fact that the school are going for IQM and that this SCR is in essence, I suppose, a deep dive into inclusion in the school? How do they challenge the school as appropriate to become more inclusive? And challenge and support go hand in hand. I mean, governors are worth their weight in gold and they challenge and support. But the most effective governors also, where they've been able to avail of training themselves. Perhaps they've been able to come into the school and train at times with your staff, or they have sought training themselves at governance level. But governance involvement in this process is key. And whether you decide to present the final document at one of your governor meetings, or incrementally they are asking for feedback and just to look and glance at the paperwork. It's always refreshing for an assessor to meet with some of the governors on the day of an assessment and to know that the governors understand why this is so important and a big part of school improvement. And indeed, 2.11 is also how the staff get a chance and opportunity to engage with the governor. So the three of them, yes, there will be a little bit of overlap, but we're just keen to hear and establish that at that strategic level, governors are deeply involved in inclusion in the school, are offering wise steer and counsel, and are understanding the needs and the challenges from the school's day-to-day perspective, so that they can seek solutions and invest wisely in how they can be overcome. So we're talking there about the difference between day-to-day management of inclusion and then governor steer at a different, more strategic level. Okay, 2.12, how schools have got inclusive policies and where we see it in practice, or moreover, where we see it go from practice into policy. So how you've had to adapt to inclusion issues that arise. Is it pupil premium, English additional language children, nurture, forest schools, like I mentioned today? How does policy reflect practice and practice reflect policy? What is a strong story or a narrative that you can present in that 2.12? And in 2.13, your pupil premium, your spend there. How have you strategically spent the pupil premium to aid and enhance the inclusion agenda in the school and the impact that the spend has had on certain cohorts and groups of children throughout the school? I know when schools are looking at pupil premium funding, they want to be as bespoke or as on point as possible when that money is spent. There's rationale as to how the money is spent. Let us know about what your current focus is in terms of pupil premium funding. Okay. Are there any questions on element 2 for anyone to share? Has anyone got any questions on element 2? One came in through email. Kevin, I find this element the most challenging of all, as it seems above my responsibility point or position in the school. Any advice? So whilst I can't comment specifically about this, what I will say is IQM in this document done best is through delegation and collaboration. And I think it is a tough ask for any one person to undertake one element on their own. And maybe the head teacher or the inclusion lead looking at element 2, and in essence, its title, it is best delivered by the head teacher or the deputy head, but working alongside others and coaching them through the thought processes that are involved in leadership, accountability, and management. So I can understand if there was a junior member of the team who may not be able to answer. I would say knock on your head teacher's door and arrange a time that can be worked on together. And that's a very, very honest reflection. There's one of the most challenging of the 8. But I think where the head teacher is involved in looking at the 8 elements and who is best suited, or is it a team of 2 or 3 people potentially working on an element, or like I've said, at SLT level or staff meetings, that there's a little bit of thought goes into who is completing each element best they can. I understand that's not possible in every school. And if someone wants to contact us about having difficulties themselves with any element, that's exactly a cause for contacting our central team with a bit of, we can give you a bit of approval and steer on what your next steps are, what populates it well. Okay. Maybe just to finish off then, and I think I've just stepped upon it there, as an assessor, and if you're doing element 1 and 2 in chronological order, you're at the earlier stages, but you may not be doing a chronological order. But ultimately, all schools are thinking about when the assessor visits their school and what may an assessor be looking at beyond the self-evaluation report. We're very keen to hear about the processes and the consultation and how the whole school has been involved in pulling together to get the IQM award. So one of the key aspects we're looking for is aspects of distributive leadership. We are looking to make sure that SENCOs who may lead and steer in this project are seeing other people grasp the inclusion agenda. How can assessment and curriculum in the school become more inclusive that meet the needs of all learners? That's a remit beyond the SENCO alone. So there's aspects where a head teacher can look at distributive leadership. Our assessors always follow a positive inquiry model when looking at your self-evaluation report. They are trying to catch you in and not out. So when they look at the self-evaluation report, they will want to follow up with you your strengths, and they'll want to celebrate them with you. And schools find that bit very rewarding. It's lovely to reflect upon recent journeys, wins, and momentum, and to spread that acceptance and that appreciation around the school. Our assessor will be looking at that first and foremost, and then they will engage you in constructive dialogue about your next steps. But it will be a school-led assessment, and with our assessor there giving you steer and vital insight as to what will work well going forward. We're very keen to hear about sustainability. How is the inclusion agenda in your school sustainable? And by that, again, it comes back to distributive leadership. I would say a sustainable model would be one school where the SENCO is solely responsible for inclusion and everything is in his or her laptop, and yet come September, she is moving on or he's moved on to a new job, and then there's turbulence. So we're looking for a sustainable model, teams in essence in the school, and how deep your culture of inclusion is. You will have elemental crossover, and our self-evaluation report is designed to be that way. You will repeat yourself. There'll be a strong initiative in your school that you evidence in element 1, 4, and 7, and that is fine. In fact, it adds strength to that as an initiative that is clearly working from a number of views and aspects. So do not be afraid or alarmed, particularly smaller schools that think, my goodness, I'm sounding repetitive here. You're not. You're showing that what you're doing in the school truly is improving your school across all of our 8 elements. That's something worth ring fencing, celebrating, and never letting go of. There's no predetermined style for this document. What we don't want is war and peace. Don't be producing endless pages. Be succinct and be clear. Pull our assessor and our central team by the nose to where we would see inclusive practice in your school, how it's happening, who is leading upon it, and its impact. That can be narrative in style. And again, I don't like to be too quantitative, but in each of those boxes, realistically, you should be able to fill our assessor what they need to know for the assessment in between 8 and 12 lines. That should be enough. Some schools do want to say more, and that is fine. Maybe their journey is so powerful and passionate, they want to include more. But there has to be enough detail and depth in there that our assessor understands what is happening, but not so much that you're overworked. And we are all teachers at IQM, and we know how much work this entails. And just to remind you, there's central support. So I would complete this document piecemeal. Maybe after 2 elements, send it through to ourselves, ask for that steer and approval. And again, like I've said, maybe after 4 or 5 are complete, say to IQM, we like an assessment, and nothing gets this completed like a deadline. So when you feel you're around halfway through the process, let us know you'd like an assessment. In the summer term or the spring term, suggest a few dates. The school always suggests these dates, and we'll see if we can book an assessor. There's the details there if you do require that support. And obviously, you know our website and the email address to contact us upon. With that in mind, guys, I'm very conscious of the time and how precious it is for you all. So thank you very much for attending today. Be you at home or at school, I hope you found that useful and could impact upon where you're going, or hopefully you're just nodding there saying, yes, I get this, I understand it a bit more. There are 3 more sessions like this over the next few weeks, and hope to see more of you again. And at that, I'll say thank you and good evening. Okay.